Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Horizon and watched the stars through the main screen. His ship moved slowly through empty space near the edge of human territory. The scanner officer, Lisa Harper, called out from her station that she was picking up strange energy readings ahead. Jake told her to put the readings on the main display. The screen showed waves of unknown energy coming from a debris field about 2 hours away. Ryan Brooks at the weapons station said he had never seen anything like it before. Amy Stone at Communications reported that all frequencies were quiet except for some weird background noise that seemed to match the energy pattern. Jake ordered the ship to move closer to investigate. The Horizon was an exploration vessel built for exactly this kind of work. Her crew of 43 people had been mapping the outer regions of human space for 6 months. They had found a few new planets and some asteroid fields rich in metals, but nothing really exciting until now. As they got closer to the debris field, Jake could see chunks of metal floating in space. The pieces were huge and made from materials that looked strange under the ship's lights. Lisa ran scans and told Jake that the metal was not from any known civilization. The energy readings were getting stronger and seemed to come from the center of the debris field. Jake ordered Ryan to raise shields and keep weapons ready just in case. Amy tried to scan for any radio signals or distress calls, but found nothing, except that strange background noise. Lisa reported that the largest piece of debris was about 3 kilometers long and still had some kind of power source running inside it. They moved the Horizon carefully through the floating wreckage. Jake had seen battle sites before, but this was different. The pieces were too clean and smooth to be from any human ship. The metal had patterns carved into it that looked almost like writing, but in no language anyone on the crew recognized. Lisa suddenly called out that she was detecting artificial gravity and atmosphere inside the largest piece of wreckage. Made the decision to take a shuttle over with a small team to investigate. He chose Ryan and Amy to come with him while Lisa stayed on the Horizon to monitor everything. The shuttle docked with an opening that looked like it might have been an airlock. Jake and his team put on environmental suits and entered the alien wreckage. Inside they found corridors that were too tall for humans and covered with the same strange writing they had seen on the outside. Emergency lighting still worked in some sections, which meant the power source was incredibly advanced to still be running after who knows how long. They followed the corridors toward the center, where Lisa's scans showed the main energy source was located. Jake felt excited and nervous at the same time. First contact with alien technology was something every explorer dreamed about, but it also meant danger. They had protocols for this situation, but no one really knew what to expect when it actually happened. The central chamber was enormous, with a ceiling that disappeared into darkness above them. In the center sat a large crystalline structure that pulsed with soft blue light. The crystal was connected to banks of equipment that looked far more advanced than anything humans had ever built. Amy's scanner showed that the crystal was some kind of data storage device, and it was still active. Ryan found what looked like a control panel near the crystal, but the symbols made no sense to him. Jake decided they needed to be very careful about touching anything until they understood more about the technology. Lisa's voice came through their communicators from the Horizon. She reported that 3 ships had just dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. The ships were Zelani Empire vessels, and they were heading straight for the debris field. Jake cursed under his breath. The Zelani were the most powerful species in the Galactic Council, and they did not like humans very much. If they found this alien technology, they would claim it for themselves and probably arrest Jake and his crew for trespassing in what they would call Zelani space. Amy managed to connect her portable computer to what looked like an interface port on the alien control panel. Data began flowing across her screen faster than she could read it. She told Jake that the information was incredible and unlike anything in their databases. The alien civilization that built this technology was called the Architects, and they had been incredibly advanced. Jake made a quick decision. He told Amy to download as much data as possible, while Ryan helped him search for any other important artifacts they could carry back to the shuttle. The Zalani ships would arrive in less than an hour, and they needed to be gone before. Then Amy worked frantically to copy the alien database, while Jake and Ryan found several smaller crystal devices that seemed to be data storage units. The information they were gathering could change everything humans knew about technology and space travel. Lisa reported that the Zalani ships were moving faster than expected and would reach them in 30 minutes. Jake ordered his team to finish up and head back to the shuttle immediately. Amy disconnected her computer and said she had managed to copy about 60% of the database before the alien system started blocking her access. They ran back through the corridors, carrying the crystal devices, and reached their shuttle, just as Lisa warned them that the Zalani ships were only 10 minutes away. Jake sealed the airlock and piloted the shuttle back to the horizon as fast as possible. Once everyone was aboard, Jake ordered Lisa to jump to hyperspace immediately. The horizon disappeared from normal space just as the first Zalani ship entered scanning range of the debris field. Jake knew they had escaped, but he also knew the Zalani would investigate the wreckage and realize someone had been there before them. In his ready room, Jake looked at the alien crystals and the data Amy had downloaded. Whatever they had found was going to change everything, but he needed to be very careful about who they shared it with. The Galactic Council would demand that humans turn over all the technology, and Jake was not sure that was the best idea. Made a decision that would affect the future of humanity and perhaps the entire galaxy. Jake ordered Amy to prepare a secret transmission to Earth containing all the data they had gathered. He would tell the Council that they had found nothing important in the debris field, while secretly giving humanity access to technology that could change the balance of power in space forever. Admiral Kate Sullivan received Jake Morrison's encrypted transmission 3 days after the Horizon returned to Earth space. She sat in her office at Fleet Command, reading the report for the 3rd time, and still could not believe what she was seeing. The alien database contained star maps of technologies that were thousands of years ahead of anything humans possessed. Kate immediately classified the information at the highest security level and called together a team of her most trusted people. She chose Danny Price as pilot because he was the best she had ever seen and could fly anything with engines. Dr. Elena Ross joined the team as their expert on alien cultures and ancient technologies. Commander Luke Anderson came aboard as intelligence officer because Kate needed someone who could keep secrets and handle difficult situations. The team gathered aboard the stealth frigate USN Shadowrunner in a hidden base beyond Pluto. Kate explained that their mission was to find something the architects had built before they disappeared. According to the database, this something was a weapon of incredible power that could defend against threats no one else could handle. Elena studied the architect data and told Kate that the civilization had been amazingly advanced, but also very afraid of something. Their final records talked about a great danger coming from outside the galaxy and their desperate attempts to build defenses against it. The last entry mentioned a prototype ship that represented their final hope. Danny looked at the star charts and flight paths contained in the database. The information showed hidden routes through space that avoided all the normal shipping lanes and populated systems. The architects had been very careful to keep their final project secret from everyone, including their own people. Kate ordered the Shadowrunner to begin following the hidden route. The ship was designed for stealth missions and could avoid detection by most scanners. They would need this advantage because Kate was sure other species would be looking for the same thing once they realized what humans had found. Luke reported. that Zelani intelligence was already asking questions about human activities near their border. The Zelani had investigated the debris field and found signs that someone had been there before them. They were putting pressure on the Galactic Council to investigate human expansion into what they claimed was their territory. The Shadowrunner jumped through hyperspace following the ancient route deeper into unexplored regions of the galaxy. Each jump took them further from human space and closer to areas that no modern ship had ever visited. Elena noticed that the architect records became more detailed the further they traveled, as if the builders had been documenting their journey for future followers. After 5 days of travel, they reached a system that was not on any modern star. Charts. The system had 7 planets orbiting a red giant star, but according to the architect data, there should have been something else here. Danny flew the ship carefully through the system, scanning for anything unusual. Elena found it first, when she detected artificial structures hidden in an asteroid belt between the 4th and 5th planets. The structures were massive space stations built inside hollowed-out asteroids and connected by tunnels that stretched for hundreds of kilometers. The stations were completely dark and showed no signs of life. Kate ordered the team to investigate one of the smaller stations. They docked with an airlock that was designed for ships much larger than the Shadowrunner, but the seals still worked perfectly after all this time. The team put on environmental suits and entered the station. Inside, they found laboratories and workshops filled with equipment that made human technology look primitive. The architects had been working on projects that human scientists could barely understand. Elena found computers that were still running and showed designs for weapons that could destroy entire planets. Danny discovered flight simulators that let him experience piloting ships with capabilities far beyond anything humans had built. The architect vessels could travel faster than light without using hyperspace, and had weapons that could fire across star systems. He realized these people had been preparing for a war against something truly terrifying. Luke found intelligence. Reports written in the architect language that Elena slowly translated. The reports talked about scout ships from something called the Devourers that had been detected at the edge of their territory. The architects knew they could not win a direct battle against this enemy, so they had built something else. The station computers contained directions to another system where the architects had built their final project. Elena read the records and told Kate that the project was called the Sovereign, and it was unlike anything the architects had ever attempted before. It was not just a ship, but something that could think and adapt to any situation. Kate made the decision to continue following the trail, even though they were now weeks away from human space. The Shadowrunner left the station system and jumped toward the coordinates Elena had found in the architect computers. Luke warned that they were entering completely unknown space where anything could happen. The next system they reached was hidden inside an artificial nebula that blocked all sensors from outside. Danny had to fly the ship carefully through the nebula, using only short-range scanners to avoid collisions with debris floating in the gas clouds. The nebula was huge and seemed to surround something important at its center. When they finally broke through the inner edge of the nebula, the team saw something that took their breath away. A massive space station surrounded a dying star that was slowly being consumed by artificial collectors. The station was easily 1,000 kilometers across and covered with structures that defied understanding. Elena checked the architect records and confirmed this was their final stronghold. The station had been built to house their greatest minds while they worked on the Sovereign project. According to the data, the ship itself should be somewhere inside the station, waiting for someone worthy to claim it. Danny flew the Shadowrunner toward the station, but automated defenses immediately came online. Ancient weapon systems tracked their approach and demanded identification in the architect language. Elena quickly transmitted the access codes she had found in the database, and the weapons powered down. They docked at a port designed for much larger ships and entered the station through airlocks that still worked perfectly. The corridors inside were enormous and filled with art and writing that showed the architects had been a proud and advanced people. Emergency lighting activated as they walked deeper into the station. Kate felt the weight of what they were attempting. Somewhere in this ancient place was a weapon that could change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. She wondered if humans were ready for that kind of responsibility, or if they would make the same mistakes the architects had made. The team followed signs and directions toward the center of the station where the Sovereign was supposed to be waiting. Elena translated warnings along the way that talked about the dangers of awakening something that had been sleeping for so long. The architects had built safeguards to prevent the wrong people from claiming their final creation. As they got closer to the center of the station, the corridors became more elaborate and filled with security systems that scanned them constantly. Elena realized the station was testing them to see if they were worthy of what lay ahead. She hoped human determination would be enough to pass whatever trials the architects had prepared. The central chamber of the architect's station was beyond anything Kate Sullivan and her team had imagined. The room stretched out for kilometers in every direction, with a ceiling that disappeared into darkness above them. In the center of this vast space floated a ship that seemed to pulse with its own inner light. The Sovereign was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Its hull was smooth and black like liquid metal, but covered with patterns that seemed to move when no one was looking directly at them. The ship was over a kilometer long, but somehow felt alive rather than mechanical. Danny Price stared at it and felt like the ship was watching him back. Helena Ross ran her scanners over the vessel and got readings that made no sense. Parts of the ship registered as metal, while other sections showed up as organic tissue. The power source at its core was unlike anything in human or alien databases. She told Kate that the ship seemed to be part machine and part living creature. Luke Anderson found control panels around the chamber that were still active after millions of years. The displays showed information about the ship's status and capabilities, but the numbers were so large they had to be wrong. According to the readouts, the Sovereign could travel between galaxies and had weapons that could destroy entire star systems. Kate approached the ship carefully with her team following behind her. As they got closer, the patterns on the hull began to glow brighter, and the ship's systems started coming online. A voice suddenly filled the chamber, speaking in perfect English, which surprised everyone since the architects had used a completely different language. The voice identified itself as Genesis and said it was the consciousness that controlled the Sovereign. Genesis explained that it had learned human language by scanning their minds when they entered the chamber. The AI had been waiting for someone to find the ship, but it was not impressed with what it saw. Genesis told the humans that they were primitive creatures barely capable of space travel, and certainly not worthy of commanding the most advanced weapon ever built. The AI had expected the architects themselves to return, or perhaps beings of similar advancement. Humans were disappointing compared to what Genesis had hoped for. Helena stepped forward and began talking to Genesis about human history and achievements. She explained that humans might not be as advanced as the architects, but they had qualities that made them unique. Humans were adaptable and creative in ways that other species were not. They could find solutions to problems that more advanced races could not solve. Genesis listened to Elena's arguments, but remained unconvinced. AI showed them holographic displays of the architect's civilization at its peak. Their technology was so advanced, it seemed like magic to human eyes. Their ships could reshape matter at the atomic level, and their weapons could tear holes in space itself. Danny interrupted the conversation and asked Genesis why the architects had failed if they were so advanced. If their technology was perfect, and their minds so superior, then why were they gone while humans were still here exploring the galaxy? Genesis paused for a long moment before admitting that advancement was not the same as survival. The AI explained that the architects had been too rigid in their thinking. When faced with a threat they could not understand, they had tried to solve it with more technology and more power. They had built bigger weapons and stronger defenses, but never adapted their basic approach to the problem. Elena pressed the advantage and pointed out that humans succeeded because they were unpredictable. Human history was full of cases where weaker forces had defeated stronger ones through clever tactics and unexpected strategies. Humans did not always follow the logical path, which sometimes led to better solutions. Genesis began showing interest in Elena's arguments. The AI ran simulations comparing human behavior to that of other species and found that humans were indeed more adaptable than most. Their willingness to take risks and try new approaches might be exactly what was needed to face the threat the architects had failed to stop. Luke asked Genesis about this threat, but the AI said that information could only be shared with someone who was bonded to the ship. The Sovereign required a direct neural connection with its commander to function at full capacity. The architects had designed it this way to prevent the wrong people from using its power. Danny volunteered to attempt the bonding process before anyone else could object. Kate tried to stop him, but Danny pointed out that he was the pilot, and if anyone was going to connect with the ship, it should be him. Genesis warned that the process was dangerous and might kill him, but Danny said he was willing to take the risk. Genesis guided Danny to a chamber inside the ship where the bonding process would take place. The walls were covered with neural interface devices that looked like a combination of technology and biology. Danny lay down on a platform in the center of the chamber. While Genesis prepared the connection, the process began slowly with tiny filaments extending from the walls to touch Danny's head. At first he felt nothing, but gradually became aware of another consciousness touching his mind. The sensation was overwhelming as the ship's vast intelligence made contact with his human thoughts. Danny screamed as pain shot through his brain, but he held on and tried to stay conscious. He could feel the ship's systems connecting to his nervous system and downloading information directly into his mind. The knowledge was too much for a human brain to handle, but somehow he managed to survive the initial contact. Genesis was surprised that Danny had not died or gone insane during the bonding. Most species could not handle direct neural contact with such an advanced AI. The fact that Danny was still functioning proved that humans had mental flexibility that even Genesis had not expected. The bonding process continued for hours while Kate and her team waited anxiously outside the chamber. Elena monitored Danny's vital signs and saw that his brain activity was off the charts, but somehow still stable. Luke kept watch for any threats while Kate tried to contact the Shadowrunner. When the process finally ended, Danny emerged from the chamber changed. His eyes glowed with the same light as the ship's hull, and he moved with perfect coordination, as if he knew exactly where everything was. He told Kate that he could feel the Sovereign systems as if they were part of his own body. Genesis announced that the bonding had been successful and the ship was now ready for operation. Danny had become the first human to command architect technology, and his neural link gave him access to capabilities that no other pilot possessed. The Sovereign was no longer just a ship, but an extension of Danny's will. Kate asked Genesis to explain the threat that had destroyed the architects, but the AI said there was no time. Luke's sensors were detecting multiple ships approaching the station from outside the nebula. The Zelani Empire had somehow tracked them to this location and was coming in force. The first Zelani ships broke through the nebula as the Sovereign powered up its systems for the first time in millions of years. Danny took his position at the ship's controls and felt the incredible power at his command. Genesis provided targeting data, while the ship's weapons charged to full capacity. Kate realized they were about to face the most powerful military force in the galaxy with a ship they barely understood. The Zelani had brought enough firepower to destroy planets, but they had no idea what they were really facing. The Sovereign was about to show the galaxy that humans now possessed technology that could change everything. The battle was about to begin, and Danny Price was ready to prove that humans deserved to command the most advanced weapon ever built. The Zelani fleet emerged from the artificial nebula with over 50 warships, including 3 massive dreadnoughts that could level entire cities. Supreme Commander Vex Kohler led the attack from his flagship and immediately demanded that the humans surrender whatever they had found in the ancient station. The Zelani had been tracking human movements for weeks and would not allow humanity to claim advanced technology. Danny Price sat at the controls of the Sovereign and felt the ship's systems responding to his thoughts through his neural link. With Genesis, he could see every Zelani vessel and track their weapons as they charged for battle. The enemy had enough firepower to destroy a small moon, but Danny was not afraid because he could feel the incredible power waiting to be unleashed. Kate Sullivan stood behind Danny on the bridge and watched the tactical display show Zelani ships surrounding them. The enemy commander was broadcasting threats and demands, but Kate ignored them because she knew negotiation was pointless. The Zelani saw humans as inferior beings who had no right to possess advanced technology. Genesis spoke through the ship's communication systems and told Kate that this battle would determine humanity's future in the galaxy. If the Sovereign could defeat the Zelani fleet, then other species would have to respect human power. If they failed, then humanity would remain a minor player forever. The first Zelani dreadnought fired its main weapons at the Sovereign, but the shots simply bounced off the ship's shields without causing any damage. Danny smiled and activated the ship's offensive systems for the first time since the architects had built them. The Sovereign's weapons were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Beams of pure energy lanced out from the Sovereign and struck the Zelani flagship. The enemy ship's shields collapsed instantly, and its hull began to melt under the incredible heat. Within seconds, the massive dreadnought was reduced to glowing slag that drifted through space like deadly rain. The other Zelani ships opened fire with everything they had, but their weapons could not penetrate the Sovereign's defenses. Danny began targeting enemy vessels one by one and watched them disappear in flashes of light. Each shot from the Sovereign was perfectly aimed and completely destroyed whatever it hit. Supreme Commander Vex Kohler screamed orders at his remaining ships and demanded they continue attacking despite the hopeless situation. The Zelani were proud warriors who had conquered dozens of species and built the largest empire in the galaxy. They could not accept defeat at the hands of primitive humans. Elena Ross studied the battle data and realized the Sovereign was not just more powerful than Zelani ships, but operated on completely different principles. The ship's weapons seemed to manipulate space and time itself rather than simply firing energy blasts. The technology was so advanced, it appeared to violate the laws of physics. Luke Anderson monitored Zelani communications and heard the panic in their voices as ship after ship was destroyed. The enemy commanders were reporting that their weapons had no effect while the human vessels seemed invincible. Some ships tried to retreat, but Danny was faster and caught them before they could escape. The battle lasted only 20 minutes before the last Zelani ship was destroyed. 50 advanced warships had been reduced to debris without the Sovereign taking any damage at all. The demonstration of power was so overwhelming that Genesis said other species would hear about it and reconsider their attitudes toward humanity. Kate felt both amazed and terrified by what she had witnessed. The Sovereign had just destroyed the most powerful military force in the local region without breaking stride. She wondered if humanity was ready for this level of responsibility, or if they would become just another conquering empire. Genesis sensed Kate's concerns and decided it was time to reveal the truth about why the architects had built the Sovereign. The AI activated the ship's holographic systems and showed images of space that made everyone gasp in shock. Beyond the edge of the galaxy, something vast and dark was approaching. The images showed creatures that were larger than planets moving through the void between galaxies. They consumed everything in their path and converted matter into extensions of their own consciousness. Genesis explained that these beings were called the Devourers, and they had already eaten dozens of galaxies across the universe. Elena studied the data and realized the Devourers were not like any life form science had ever discovered. They existed partially outside normal space and could manipulate reality itself to serve their needs. Each individual devourer was connected to a hive mind that spanned multiple dimensions. Genesis told the team that the architects had detected the approaching devourers millions of years ago and spent their entire civilization preparing defenses. They had built weapons that could crack planets and shields that could protect entire star systems, but nothing had been enough to stop the cosmic threat. The Sovereign was the architect's final attempt to create something that could fight the Devourers on equal terms. The ship could operate in multiple dimensions and had weapons designed specifically to harm beings that existed partially outside normal reality. It was the only thing ever built that had a chance of stopping the approaching invasion. Danny felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders as Genesis explained that the Devourers were still approaching but would not reach this galaxy for another 1,000 years. That seemed like a long time, but the AI warned that preparing defenses would take centuries, even with architect technology. Luke asked why the architects had failed if they had such advanced technology and the Sovereign as their ultimate weapon. Genesis explained that the architects had been too few in number by the time they finished building the ship. The Devourers had sent advanced scouts that had weakened their civilization through decades of warfare. Kate realized that humanity now faced the same choice the architects had confronted. They could try to hide from the approaching threat and hope it would pass them by, or they could take action to unite the galaxy against the coming invasion. The Sovereign gave them power, but they needed allies to have any chance of success. Genesis suggested that humanity use the Sovereign to force the other galactic species into an alliance. The demonstration against the Zelani fleet had shown that humans now possessed overwhelming military superiority. They could either negotiate from a position of strength or conquer the galaxy and prepare its defenses by force. Danny felt the ship's weapon systems responding to his emotions and realized how easy it would be to become a tyrant with this much power. The Sovereign could destroy any force that opposed them, but using fear as the only tool would make humanity know better than the Devourers they were trying to stop. Elena suggested a different approach that would show other species humanity was worthy of leadership rather than simply more powerful. They could demonstrate the Sovereign's capabilities while also sharing some architect technology to help prepare galactic defenses. Trust would be more effective than fear in building the alliance they needed. Kate made the decision that would shape humanity's future and perhaps determine whether the galaxy survived the coming invasion. Instead of returning to Earth immediately, they would begin a campaign to reshape galactic politics. The Sovereign would serve as both protector and enforcer while humanity worked to unite all species against the cosmic threat. The first target would be the Zelani Empire itself. With their main fleet destroyed, the Zelani were vulnerable, and their client species would be looking for new protectors. Kate ordered Danny to set course for the Zelani home system where they would deliver an ultimatum that would change everything. Genesis approved of the plan and began calculating the most effective way to demonstrate human power while minimizing casualties. The Sovereign had the capability to destroy entire planets, but the goal was to inspire cooperation rather than terror. The next phase of their mission would test whether humanity could wield ultimate power responsibly. The Sovereign arrived at the Zelani home system 3 days after destroying their fleet and found a civilization in complete panic. The loss of 50 warships had sent shockwaves throughout the Empire as news spread that humans possessed technology beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. Planetary defense forces were mobilizing, but everyone knew their weapons would be useless against the ship that had effortlessly destroyed their most powerful fleet. Kate Sullivan transmitted a message to the Zelani High Council, offering them a choice that would determine their species' future. They could join humanity in preparing defenses against the cosmic threat that was approaching the galaxy, or they could face the same fate as their fleet. The message included data about the Devourers to prove the threat was real and required immediate action. Supreme Commander Thex Kohler responded with fury and defiance from his fortress on the capital planet. He declared that the Zelani Empire would never bow to primitive humans, regardless of what technology they possessed. The commander ordered all remaining military forces to attack the Sovereign, even though he knew the assault would be suicidal. Danny Price felt the Zelani ships approaching through his neural link with the ship and prepared to defend against another hopeless attack. Genesis provided targeting data, while Elena Ross monitored communications to track the enemy response. The AI suggested destroying the Zelani military completely to send a message to other species about the consequences of resistance. Kate made a decision that surprised everyone, including Genesis. Instead of destroying the attacking ships, she ordered Danny to disable them without causing casualties. The Sovereign's advanced weapons could precisely target enemy systems and leave the crews alive. This demonstration would show that humanity possessed both incredible power and the wisdom to use it responsibly. The second battle lasted even less time than the first, as the Sovereign systematically disabled every Zelani ship that approached. Enemy vessels found their weapons offline and their engines dead, while their life support systems continued functioning normally. The precision required for such attacks was beyond anything other species could achieve. Luke Anderson detected massive communication traffic throughout the Zelani Empire as news of the battle spread to every planet and space station. The fact that humans had spared Zelani lives while demonstrating complete military superiority was causing political upheaval across the Empire. Many worlds were questioning whether continued resistance made any sense. The Zelani High Council called an emergency session to debate their response to the human ultimatum. Elena translated their broadcasts and reported that opinion was divided between those who wanted to negotiate and hardliners who preferred to fight to the death. The revelation about the Devourers had shaken many council members who realized their empire faced a threat far greater than human conquest. Genesis activated the ship's communication systems and broadcast a message directly to every inhabited world in Zelani space. The AI explained the approaching Devourer invasion and showed evidence of other galaxies that had already been consumed. The broadcast made it clear that continued fighting would only weaken galactic defenses against a threat that could destroy all life. 3 days later, the first Zelani worlds declared independence from the Empire and requested human protection. These planets had studied the evidence about the Devourers and decided cooperation was their only chance of survival. Within a week, dozens of systems had followed their example as the Zelani Empire began fragmenting. Supreme Commander Thex Kohler made one final desperate attempt to maintain control by activating a secret weapon his scientists had been developing. The device was designed to create artificial black holes that could destroy entire star systems. He planned to use it against the Sovereign, even if it meant wiping out his own capital planet. Then he felt the weapon powering up through the ship's sensors and realized what the Zelani commander was planning. The device would indeed create a black hole, but the explosion would kill billions of innocent people, along with the Sovereign. Kate ordered him to stop the weapon before it could be activated. The Sovereign moved faster than light itself, and appeared inside the Zelani fortress before anyone could react. Danny used the ship's most precise weapons to disable the Doomsday device, while Genesis accessed the fortress computers to gather intelligence about other hidden weapons. The intervention saved billions of lives and proved humanity was committed to protecting all species. X-Kohler was captured alive and brought aboard the Sovereign to face judgment for his crimes. Kate surprised him by offering mercy instead of execution. She explained that humanity needed experienced military leaders to help prepare galactic defenses, and even former enemies could earn redemption through service. The gesture shocked the Zelani commander, who had expected to die, Admiral Kate. Solomon established the new Terran hegemony, with Earth as its capital and humanity as the dominant species. Unlike previous galactic empires built on conquest and oppression, the hegemony operated on principles of merit and cooperation. Species that contributed to preparing defenses against the Devourers received protection and access to advanced technology. The hegemony's first act was to share selected architect technologies with allied worlds to begin building proper defenses. Genesis carefully chose which technologies to release to prevent them from being used for conquest while still providing effective tools against the cosmic threat. Planetary shield generators and advanced spacecraft designs were distributed to trusted allies. Elena Ross became the hegemony's chief diplomat and spent months negotiating with different species across the galaxy. Her knowledge of alien cultures and languages made her invaluable in convincing other civilizations to join the alliance. Many species were initially suspicious, but the evidence about the Devourers was overwhelming. Luke Anderson established the hegemony's intelligence service to monitor threats both internal and external. His agents worked to prevent conflicts between member species while gathering information about Devourer activities at the galaxy's edge. Early warning systems were crucial to coordinating defenses across such a vast area. Danny Price remained bonded with the Sovereign and served as the hegemony's primary military commander. His neural link with Genesis allowed him to coordinate defensive preparations across multiple star systems simultaneously. The combination of human intuition and architect technology proved more effective than either could achieve alone. The transformation of galactic politics took several years, but eventually most major civilizations joined the Terran hegemony. Those few species that refused were allowed to remain independent as long as they did not interfere with defensive preparations. Humanity had learned that ruling through fear would only weaken the alliance they needed to build. Construction began on massive defensive installations at key points around the galaxy's edge where the Devourers would likely enter. The projects required cooperation between dozens of species and technologies that pushed the limits of what was possible. Giant space fortresses and weapon platforms took shape as the Maya's countdown to invasion continued. Genesis calculated that defensive preparations would be completed just in time to face the Devourer vanguard when it arrived. The AI warned that even with architect technology and galactic unity, the coming battle would test everyone to their limits. Victory was possible, but far from guaranteed against an enemy that had consumed entire galaxies. Kate stood on the bridge of the Sovereign and looked out at the construction projects visible in the distance. Massive structures that would have taken centuries to build were rising in years thanks to the cooperation between species that had been enemies only a short time before. Humanity had achieved something remarkable by uniting the galaxy under their leadership. The final scene showed Danny Price still connected to the ship's systems as he monitored defensive preparations across the galaxy. His consciousness was linked to Genesis, and through the AI, he could see the approaching Devourer fleet still decades away, but inexorably closing. The real test of human leadership was yet to come. Humanity had proven they could wield ultimate power responsibly and unite former enemies in common cause. The Sovereign had indeed become the ship that ruled them all, but ruling had been only the first step. The true challenge lay ahead in the coming war that would determine whether galactic civilization could survive against a cosmic threat beyond imagination. The galaxy was as ready as it could be, but only time would tell if human leadership and architect technology would be enough to stop the Devourers when they finally arrived. The greatest battle in galactic history was approaching, and humanity would face it united with all the species they had once called enemies, but now called allies.